Hello and welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Delladoni, online body transformation specialist and founder of the Health Coach Fitness. I'm here to help you optimize your health and fitness, even if you're short on time. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today, we are discussing how to train for maximum results. Now, naturally, this is a bit of a loaded term because maximum results depends naturally on the goals you have. But primarily what we're going to be discussing today is concurrent training. Now, concurrent training is a term used basically to describe doing cardio and weights, either in the same session or within the same workout block. So this is formally putting in some cardio sessions as part of your training. And I normally do this as part of the mesocycle. On a weekly plan, you'd have certain cardio sessions and certain weights sessions. Now, let's get straight into the benefits of that. Fat loss, obviously. Doing some cardio is going to boost your calorie expenditure. That is what we primarily use cardio for, aside from building up your cardiovascular health. So we all know you need to do some cardio, you need to put your heart under some form of strain so that your heart gets stronger, gets more efficient at working, your breathing gets better, and so on and so forth. Also, we also know that cardio literally just burns calories. Awesome. Who doesn't want that? Now, whilst cardio does that, lifting weights helps preserve, potentially increase, depending on calorie intake and some other stuff that we've discussed in the past and will probably be discussing in the future, increase your muscle mass. If you combine the two, the idea is that you're maintaining the tissue you have and potentially dropping some body fat, which is always what you want. Now, for reference, the reason I say maintaining your muscle tissue whilst dropping some body fat is because, by and large, if you just go on a calorie deficit and you start dropping weight without doing any training, what will usually happen is you also lose some muscle tissue. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but just know that this is a thing that can happen. Like I say, cardiovascular health. Obviously, if you're working your heart a little bit harder doing some cardio, then if it all goes well, you're going to improve your stamina. You're going to improve your recovery between your weight training sessions. And with improved stamina and improved recovery, you're going to be able to push harder in your lifts. And obviously, most people are fairly busy these days. And being smart about when you do some cardio and when you're doing your weight session is going to be a little bit more time efficient than if you just went through blocks of just weight training and blocks of just cardio and blocks of just weight training. You get the idea. What are some of the main drawbacks? There's a thing called interference effect. Okay, so what is the interference effect or muscle interference? What we have to take into account is that there are different signals. The stimulus you're putting into the system, into your body, is different. Cardio is one type of stimulus. Weightlifting is a different type of stimulus. And so we need to balance out those stimuli so that one isn't interfering with the other. Overdoing cardio, if you're trying to improve muscle tissue, let's say, if you do too much cardio, that will potentially dampen some of those muscle building signals, and your body might prioritize endurance adaptations, for example. The same the other way around. You might find that you are under recovering. So if you're doing some really intense cardio sessions, combining with some really intense lifting sessions, you can end up overstressing your central nervous system, maybe even some more almost tangible tissues like your joints and your muscles, obviously. And if you're not recovering properly, that stuff will start building up over time. I tend to say that stress is by and large the same. The stress response is by and large the same, whether it's you arguing with your mother-in-law, or you running away from a lion, or you having to deal with your boss at work, or you having to deal with training. Understanding that under recovering can become an issue. And naturally, with that also comes a bit of mental fatigue. You know that if you've ever trained legs really hard and you have a degree of almost fear of that leg session, you come and you do it. Now imagine doing that, so you have that build up, that anticipation of doing that, and then you have the anticipation of having to go and do a 10K run straight after. That's mentally draining, as well as naturally physically draining. Your muscles are already shot from having trained legs really heavy, and now you're going to have to go for a run. That also increases potentially the risk of injury. So it's just important to, like I say, make sure you're balancing everything out so that stress isn't going over. You've got enough recovery, the signals being sent, the stimuli being sent into your system, working synergistically as opposed to interfering with one another. Okay. If there's so many quote unquote drawbacks, how can we work it so it's actually effective? And the idea here, by and large, is order. Order matters. And what we tend to find is that separating your cardio and your lifting sessions by at the very least a few hours, but better even doing them on alternate days, can minimize that interference effect. So if for whatever reason you're having to train twice that day, then making sure you're getting your weights in and then your cardio is probably better. If for whatever reason you have to do your sessions on the same day and in the same session, then making sure you do your weights first before you do your cardio. And the reason for that is that cardio by and large is repetitive movement, right? Whereas weights tends to be a lot more demanding on your central nervous system. So making sure that you get the stuff that's demanding on your central nervous system first is going to require core engagement to a higher degree than doing some cardio. It's going to require skill to a higher degree than doing cardio. So getting that done first is going to be better. The next thing that we need to take into consideration, aside from order, as in which order you do it, is intensity versus volume. If you're doing your cardio and you're doing a lot of HIIT sessions with high intensity intervals, it's by and large going to be a little bit more muscle friendly than long steady state cardio. And the reason for that is that long steady state cardio is just very repetitive and it's very stressful for the body. Not only that, but the signals you're sending with steady state cardio, more endurance based than if you go in and you smash like really high intensity intervals, because of usually the explosive power based nature of HIIT training. They'll tend to marry up a little bit better with weights. So that's just something to bear in mind. The next thing for us to think about is always and forever nutrition. Because if you're going to be training like this, if you're going to be training period, if you just need to get more protein, is the long and short. Most people by and large don't get enough protein, as we've discussed many times on this podcast. So make sure you're having plenty of protein. I had a client ask me literally yesterday whether 100 grams of protein a day would be enough. Now, this is a dude that's about 6 foot tall and weighs about 75 kilos. The answer is absolutely not. 100 grams of protein are just not enough, considering he's also training 3 times a week and the goal is to add on tissue. So it's important to understand that you probably need more protein than you think you're going to need. Okay, good. I'm glad we covered that off. And if you're a bit more advanced and you are in the throes of it, if you know what you're doing, you can periodize your program. So you're going through cycles of hypertrophy and cardio. So you have, even if you're concurrent training throughout all of your mesocycles, you can plan one mesocycle is slightly more weights focused and the other one slightly more cardio focused and so on and so forth. But if you're not sure what you're doing, but this does sound in fact interesting to you, drop me a message, get hold of me, I'll help you out. Okay. Now, things that we need to consider when doing concurrent training, by and large, how is this going to impact me? Because really, that's why we do this. Nobody likes going to the gym and suffering, putting themselves through pain and agony just for the sake of it. You want to get something out of it. So why would you? And here's the thing. You're going to feel fitter. And let me give you an example. You've never seen a CrossFit person walking around all shy and meek, have you? No. The reason for that is that they feel physically fit. They can lift heavy. They've got the cardio. They know that they can conquer the world. So if you're strong and you're cardiovascularly fit, why wouldn't you feel confident? That's number one. Your body can do things and can perform when it needs to. 2, it's a weird paradox, it's a weird dichotomy, the whole stress relief thing, because stress by and large is to do with perception and how we perceive that stress. Now, we are in fact monkeys. We are big, clever, intelligent apes. And as such, we should really be running around, hanging off trees, chasing, woolly mammoths with spears. Instead, we're sat in offices, typing away our keyboards, overdosing on caffeine. You end up with a lot of pent-up energy that needs relief. And let me give you a quick example, is if for whatever reason, maybe you're really ill, you live by yourself, you're really ill, and you have a dog. And because you're really ill, you can't take your dog out for a couple of days. So you maybe let the dog out of the back door into the garden for a wee and a poo, but you can't physically take that dog out for, call it 4 days. Okay. What happens? Start off with, dog gets really hyper. For the first 2-3 days, that dog is, oh my days, leave me alone, because the dog is just wanting to go out. It's maybe whining, it's just going a bit nuts. But as time goes on, what you tend to find is that dog is going to start feeling really sorry for himself. He's going to start getting depressed. And that's because he has so much physical energy he needs to burn, and he hasn't got an outlet. Maybe he'll start chewing the furniture. We are no different. Like I say, we're just big, intelligent with apes with massive brains. And we should be way more physical than we actually are. Instead, we ingest loads of stimulant, caffeine primarily. Some of you might be ingesting good old nicotine as well. And you're getting all that stimulus, you're getting all that stimulant, but you're doing nothing with it. You need to get that, going to the gym, work yourself hard. Oh my days hard. And that, because then you burn all this pent up physical energy, what you tend to find is that mentally you feel relieved. The mental stress tends to go. So that's really important. And when you combine this concurrent training, when you combine cardio with weight and you do it well, you tend to get the benefits of feeling like you're achieving something because you're lifting heavier and heavier, with the satisfaction of knowing you've just done a massive hard cardio session and you felt like your lungs were burning, you felt like your heart was about to come out of your eye sockets, and you got that done. So really important, you've got the stress that builds up because you're not doing much, and then you go and you burn all that off. Now, like I say, it's a bit of a weird dichotomy because exercise still causes your body stress. And like we said earlier, stress response is the same, but the perception that you've done something positive makes that stress less negative to you. Bit of a rant there, bit of a waffle, but hopefully you've kept up and hopefully that makes some sense. Okay, next thing here to pay attention to when it comes to mindset is avoiding burnout. I personally don't believe that you can overtrain, but I do firmly believe that you can under-recover. And that's what tends to happen with most people. For whatever reason, we like to think that sleep is for the dead, and so sleep gets pied off, you don't get enough of it, and now you're training really hard, and you're not recovering. Guys, I can't stress this enough. You need to recover, because if you start training harder, more intensely, and then work is really busy, and that's really intense, all that's going to happen is you're going to get ill. You're literally just going to drive yourself into the ground. So make sure you have your recovery strategies in place, whether that is obviously days off from the gym, whether that is whatever you find for yourself personally that helps you de-stress. Going for walks, I don't know, in the woods, going for a swim, having a date night with your missus, whatever. Do that. And always and forever, as you start moving towards a goal, the goal post that you originally staked on the floor will tend to change. And that is because as you make progress, whether that initial goal was way too far-fetched or whether it was actually too easy. So you'll be able to make adjustments to the goal. Nothing is ever set in stone. So just remember that, and remember it's okay to move the goalpost. Now, what I will say, the caveat here is this: achieve the original goal, right? Because if you move the goalpost mid-progress, you never feel like you're achieving anything. Achieve the goal, reset the goalpost. Achieve the goal, reset the goalpost. That way, you feel like you're making progress and you feel like you're achieving things in the process. Hopefully that makes some sense as well. Okay, just a quick recap. Why would you want to do some concurrent training? It may help you boost some fat loss if that's what you're looking for. And if that's not what you're looking for, it will help you improve your cardiovascular health, potentially a little bit quicker. It will also help with your lifting. And always, it's a little bit more time efficient for people that are running around with their hairs on fire, like most of us do. Some of the drawbacks would be muscle interference. So making sure that the stimulus you're putting in matches the outcome you're chasing and not the other way around. Making sure you've got enough time to recover and making sure you're not setting yourself up for failure by making your training sessions too hard or too close together. Like we said at the start, doing a heavy leg session and then going for a 10K might not be the best idea. To make sure that you're getting the most out of it, we want to make sure that you're doing things in the correct order and you're balancing the intensity of things versus the volume. We spoke about HIIT and steady state cardio. Steady state cardio in the industry is considered volume work because it's just long and it just takes time and it's just, well, volume. There's a lot of it. Whereas HIIT is less volume, but it's more intense. So again, making sure that you're putting in the right stimulus to get out the right outcome, and making sure that you've got the right nutrition strategy to get the right outcome. Now, nutrition strategy, we didn't really go into it. You just got told to eat more protein, and that's absolutely true. But there are other considerations that we need to have in terms of carbohydrate intake and water intake and so on and so forth that we won't go into today, but I'll make sure to get to in a separate episode. Mental impact of doing something like this and why you might want to do it would be it's a confidence booster. You feel fit, you feel like you can lift a lot, you feel strong, and that naturally just means you walk around with a gravitas to your step that you wouldn't have otherwise. Stress relief, I waffled on a lot about the difference in stress. I waffled on a lot about the perception of stress and how one can supersede the other in terms of benefits to you. Something I didn't mention is that you do, in fact, need stress because stress causes change. We never want to be just static and stagnant in our comfort zones. And then naturally, whilst you're doing all that, you need to make sure that you're avoiding burnout. And that ties nicely into the recovery strategies we spoke about earlier. And that also ties in somewhat adjacently to goal recalibration, if you like, which is that goalpost moving that we spoke about. Cool. Hopefully all that makes sense. Hope you followed so far. Okay. So some action steps you might need. Smart scheduling. Make sure that you plan your week or your fortnight according to the outcome you want. Make sure you have your weight sessions in there and your cardio sessions in there. Make sure you also have some rest days in there. Making sure that you're prioritizing weights before cardio so you reduce the chance of getting injured. Making sure that your cardio sessions, the appropriate level of intensity to balance out what you're trying to do. Quality nutrition, making sure you're getting, at the very least, guys, 1.4 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. For some of you, that might be a lot of protein. You know, if you're a big boy and you weigh about 100 kilos, 115 kilos, you might be talking upwards of 200 grams of protein. That is a lot of protein, but it'll be worth it. So making sure you get that. Make sure you get enough carbohydrates in you because they'll help fuel your workouts, not only your cardio workouts, but also your weight sessions. Make sure you've got your recovery rituals in place. Make sure you get plenty of sleep, plenty of hydration. Make sure you weave in de-stressing techniques that work for you. And obviously everybody's different. And like we said, stress is very much a perception game. So making sure that you weave in the things that work for you, that's also really important. And always and forever, if you can, track. You can't manage what you don't have data on. And tracking, whether that is on your phone as a quick, almost journal entry, whether that is on a physical journal, doesn't really matter. Just track your stuff because that will allow you to look back and see how much progress you've made. Guys, as always, please like, share, subscribe on whatever platform you are on. Make sure you send it to your friends. Please always feel free to give me some feedback on Instagram at Bruno Dalledoni. And I will be seeing you guys next time.